Hello, you are here with Senor DeVries, and we are starting a new book. The title is My Brother Sam is Dead. The book is by James Lincoln Collier and Christopher Collier. Chapter 1. It was April, and outside in the dark the rain whipped against the windows of our tavern, making a sound like muffled drums. We were concentrating on our dinner, and everybody jumped when the door slammed open and banged against the wall, making the plates rattle in their racks. My brother Sam was standing there, wearing a uniform. Oh my, he looked proud. Sam, my mother said. We hadn't seen him since Christmas. Shut the door, father said. The rain is blowing in. That's the way father was. Do right first, and then be friendly. But Sam was too excited to pay attention. We've beaten the British in Massachusetts, he shouted. Who has beaten the British? Father said. Sam shut the door. We have, he said, with his back to us as he slipped the latch in place. The Minutemen, the Lobsterbacks, marched out of Boston yesterday. They were looking for Mr. Adams and Mr. Hancock, and they marched up to Lexington. Some of the Massachusetts Minutemen tried to stop them there in the square, but there were too many British, and they got through and went up to Concord, looking for ammunition stores. But then the Patriots got the stores hidden mostly, and they didn't find much. And then when they turned around and went back, the Minutemen hid in the fields along the roads and massacred them all the way back to Boston. Nobody said anything. They were silent and shocked. I couldn't take my eyes off him. He looked so brave. He was wearing a scarlet coat with silver buttons and a white vest and black leggings halfway up to his knees. Oh, I envied him. He knew everybody was staring, but he liked being the center of attention, and he pretended it was just an ordinary thing and he was used to it. I'm starved, he said, and sat down at the table. I started out from Yale at 6 o'clock this morning and didn't stop to eat all the way. There were 7 of us at the table in the tap room. Mother and father and me were there. Then there was the minister, Mr. Beach, who lived in Newtown but spent Saturday night here in Reading so he could preach in our church early Sunday morning. Then there was a couple of farmers from Reading Center I didn't know, and of course, Sam. But still they all sat silent. I guess they figured that it was up to father to speak first, seeing as Sam was his son. My mother got up, fetched a plate from the rack, and filled it with stew from the iron pot on the fire. Then she drew Sam a pot from the tap and put it all down in front of him. He was hungry, and he bent over his plate and began shoveling in the food as fast as he could. Don't eat like that, father snapped. Sam looked embarrassed and sat straight. Uh, all right now, father said. Tell us the news again in an orderly manner. Father had a temper, and I could see he was trying hard not to lose it. Sam dug his spoon into the stew and started to fill his mouth. But suddenly he realized that if he had begun talking with his mouth full, father would yell at him. Again, so he put the spoonful of stew back onto his plate. Well, it's hard to tell it orderly, father. There were so many rumors around New Haven last night that— I thought it might be like that, father said. No, no, it's true about the fighting, Sam said. Captain Arnold told us himself. Captain Arnold? Father asked. Captain Benedict Arnold. He's the captain of the governor's second foot guard. He looked down at his stew. That's my company. He looked up and gave father a quick sort of scared look. That explains the fancy dress, I imagine, father said. Captain Arnold designed the uniform. Never mind, tell me the story, said father. Well, the beginning was when the Lobsterbacks— By that I suppose you mean the soldiers of your king, father said. He was still holding on to his temper. Sam blushed. All right, the British troops from the garrison in Boston, they marched up to Lexington looking for Mr. Adams and the rest. But they got away. Somebody signaled them from some church steeple in Boston. So when the British got up to Lexington, there wasn't anybody there except the Minutemen. Then the shooting started. Mr. Beach put his hand up to stop Sam. Who shot first, Sam? Sam looked confused. Well, I guess the British. I mean, that's what they say in New Haven. Who said? Father asked. Well, I'm not sure, Sam said. I guess it's hard to tell in a battle, but anyway. Sam, Father said, who do you think fired first? I don't know, Father. I don't know. But anyway. I should think it might matter to know, Sam, Father said. Why does it matter? Sam was beginning to lose his temper the way he did. What right have the lobsterbacks to be here anyway? I thought it was pretty funny that he kept calling the British lobsterbacks when he was dressed all in red, too. All right, Mr. Beach said. Let's not argue the point. What happened then? Yes, sir, said Sam. So anyway, some of the men were killed, I don't know how many, and then the British went on to some place called Concord looking for the ammunition stores there. But they didn't find very much, and they turned around and started back to Boston. That's when the Minutemen really peppered them. They chased them all the way back home. Quickly, Sam began to eat his stew before they had time to ask him more questions. That's rebellion, one of the farmers said. They'll have us in war yet. Mr. Beach shook his head. I think men of common sense will prevail. Nobody wants rebellion except fools and hotheads. That's not the way they say it in New Haven, sir, Sam said. They say that the whole colony of Massachusetts is ready to fight, and if Massachusetts fights, Connecticut will fight too. Finally, my father lost his temper and slammed his hand down on the table, making the plates jump. I will not have treason spoken in my house, Sam. Father, that isn't Father raised his hand, and for a moment I thought he was going to reach across the table and hit Sam. But instead, he slammed it down on the table again. In my house, I will decide what constitutes treason. What have they been teaching you at college? Mr. Beach liked peace. I don't think the people of Reading are anxious to fight, Sam, he said. Sam was nervous, but being Sam, he was bound to argue. You get the wrong idea from Reading, sir. There's a lot more Tories in this part of Connecticut than there are in the rest of the colonies. In New Haven, there aren't so many loyalists, and in some towns, there aren't any at all. Oh, Sam, Mr. Beach said, I think you'll find that loyalty is a virtue everywhere. We've had these things before. That vicious nonsense of those madmen dressing up like Indians and throwing tea into Boston Harbor, as if wetting a few hundred weight of tea would stop the mightiest army on the face of the earth. These agitators can also manage to stir up the passions of the people for a week or so, but it never lasts. A month later, everybody's forgotten it, except the wives and the children of the men who've managed to get themselves killed. Sir, it's worth dying to be free. That made Father shout, Free? Free to do what, Sam? Free to mock your king? To shoot your neighbor? To make a mess of thousands of lives? Where have you been getting these ideas? You don't understand, Father. You just don't understand. If they won't let us be free, we have to fight. Why should they get rich off our backs in England? They're 3,000 miles away. How can they make laws for us? They have no idea how things are here. It made me nervous to listen to Sam argue with Father. I could see that Mr. Beach wanted to quiet him down too, before he and Father got into a real fight that they sometimes did. God meant man to obey. He meant children to obey their fathers. He meant men to obey their kings. As a subject of the Lord our God, I don't question his ways. As a subject of his majesty, George III, should you question his ways? Answer me this, Sam. Do you really think that you know better than the king and those learned men in Parliament? Some of those men in Parliament agree with me, sir, said Sam. Not many, Sam, Father said. Edmund Burke, Sam replied. Father lost his temper again. He banged his hand down on the table once more. Sam, there'll be no more talk on this tonight. He meant it, and Sam knew he meant it too. So he shut up, and the conversation turned to repairs. Mr. Beach wanted to make to the church. I was glad too. It scared me when Sam argued with grown-ups like that. Of course, Sam was that way. I was shooting out whatever came into his mind and sometimes getting hit by Father for it. Father hardly ever hit me, but he hit Sam dozens of times, mostly for arguing. Mother always said, Sam isn't really rebellious, just too quick with his tongue. If he'd only learned to stop and think before he spoke. But Sam couldn't seem to learn that, and Mother hated it when Father hit Sam for speaking out. But there wasn't anything she could do about it. And anyway, she believed that Father was right. Children ought to keep a civil tongue in their heads. I guess he was right. Children are supposed to keep quiet and not say anything, even when they know the grown-ups are wrong. But sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I have trouble keeping quiet myself, although not near as much trouble as Sam. Of course, Sam was almost a grown up himself. He was 16. He had been away at college for almost a year, so you couldn't really call him a child anymore. I guess that was part of the trouble. He thought he was a grown up, and he didn't want anybody to tell him what to do. Except I could tell that he was still afraid of Father. But to be honest, I wasn't sure if Sam was right about the fighting anyway. It sounded right when he said it, that we should be free and not have to take orders from people who are so far away, and all that. But I figured there had to be more to it than Sam knew about. Father had never gone to college the way Sam had, but still I was pretty sure that he knew more than Sam. Father was a grown-up, and maybe Sam thought he was a grown-up too. But as far as I was concerned, he was just my brother. He couldn't scare you the way Father could. Besides, it made me glad to have him come home, and I didn't want him to get into a big fight with Father and spoil it. I just wanted him to stop talking until dinner was over and we could go up to the loft where we slept, and I could lie in the dark snuggled up next to him and keep warm and let him tell me stories about Yale and the pretty girls he knew in New Haven. He always had some victories to tell about whenever he came home from college. Mostly they were in debates where he scored a point telling over his enemy or whatever you call them. He would say, "And then I scored a point telling Tim." He'd explain to me what the telling point was, and I never understood. And then he'd say, "Tim, it was a great triumph. Afterwards, everybody crowded around me saying, 'That was a telling point, Meeker, a telling point.'" Sam couldn't boast about his triumphs to Father or to Mother or to Mr. Beach or anybody like that, because boasting was pride and pride was a sin. And he could boast to me about them because I didn't care whether it was a pride or not, and they were interesting. And I guess most of his boasts were true. He was always bringing home some book in Latin or Greek with an inscription saying he had won it for some telling point he had scored. Of course, the inscriptions were usually in Greek, which I couldn't read, but I believed him. So anyway, I didn't want Sam to get in a fight with Father. It would spoil the fun. And besides, if it were bad enough fight, Sam might run away. He'd usually done that a few times after a fight with Father. Usually, he just ran away to Tom Warup's hut behind Colonial Reed's house. Tom Warup's was the last Indian we had in Redding. He was the grandson of a famous chief named Chief Chicken, which is a funny name for a chief. He didn't mind having people sleep in his hut. It made a convenient place for Sam to run away to, because it was close enough so he could come home without any trouble after he'd stopped running away. But Sam stayed pretty quiet during supper. The grown-ups didn't pay attention to him, but I kept looking at him and admired his uniform, and I could see he was thinking about something. It worried me that something else was for him to get in a fight with Father about. But finally supper was over, and he'd stayed quiet, and I figured he was safe. The grown-ups got up. "Sam, are you going to help me with the milking?" I asked. "I can't. My uniform will get dirty." "Take it off then," I said. I could see he didn't want to do that. "My other clothes are still at Yale," he responded. "Borrow some from Father," I suggested. All right," he said. "Go on out to the barn. I'll come in a minute." I knew he'd stall as long as he could, but I went out anyway, so as not to get into a fight with him myself. The barn is out behind the house. Actually, the house is partly a store and partly a tavern, too. The main room is the tap room with a huge stone fireplace and barrels full. There's a big table in the middle with benches down the sides, and then at the end, opposite the fireplace, more barrels and bins full of things we sell to the farmers around Redding. We sell things like cloth and needles and thread, and nails and knives and spoons, salt and flour, pots and pans, and some tools. Although mainly, if anyone wants tools, they have to go to Fairfield for them. And that's where we're going to stop today. Thank you.